The room was full, every seat taken, every camera focused, every heart waiting. The hall at the National Science and Leadership Summit was brighter than ever. World leaders, scientists, and journalists from around the globe filled the space. Banners stretched across the walls, celebrating innovation, resilience, and progress. Sundar Pichai sat calmly in the front row, surrounded by CEOs and dignitaries. Next to him was an empty seat. One quiet, lonely space in row 2. People whispered about it, but no one asked questions. Not yet. Outside, under the morning sun, a woman stood still. Her hands were shaking slightly. Her heart was louder than the crowd cheering inside. Her name was Lakshmi Pichai. Yes, the same Lakshmi who once taught school in a small village where chalk dust danced in the air and children dreamed under leaking roofs. The same woman who had walked away from the spotlight for decades, while her son rose to lead the tech world. She didn't plan to come today. In fact, she had almost turned around at the gate. She had no invitation, no official role, no badge, just a simple cotton sari, a handbag with a few notes, and an old photograph of her husband, folded neatly inside. She had not spoken publicly in years. She never tried to be seen. She only came because something in her heart told her this day was different. A security guard spotted her. He moved forward, unsure. "Ma'am, are you lost?" he asked kindly. Lakshmi gave him a soft smile. "I don't know yet," she said, her voice calm but heavy. He was about to explain the strict protocol when a younger officer rushed over with a tablet in hand. He looked at Lakshmi, then at the screen. His eyes widened. "Please wait here," he said quickly, and ran inside. Minutes passed. Lakshmi looked at the crowd through the glass doors. She saw Sundar sitting straight, adjusting his watch, unaware that she was only steps away. She saw the grand stage, the massive podium, the Prime Minister's name lit in golden letters. Inside, the host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji." The hall echoed with applause as Modi ji walked in with his usual calm yet commanding presence. He didn't smile right away. He didn't wave. Instead, he walked straight to the mic, his eyes scanning the crowd. People leaned in. The cameras zoomed. Then, his voice filled the room. "Before I begin, I want to say a name." The room fell silent. Lakshmi Pichai. A gasp ran through the hall like a silent wind. Sundar turned sharply, confused. He looked around, trying to understand what was happening. "Lakshmi Pichai," Modi repeated, "is not just a mother. She is a foundation, a teacher, a quiet force that helped build one of the world's most respected minds. Today, we honor her not for what her son has done, but for what she gave up so he could do it." Sundar's eyes widened. Lakshmi stood, frozen outside. "She taught in a village school for 30 years, Modi continued. "She walked miles so her students could learn. She spent nights grading papers under a kerosene lamp, and she raised a child who would one day inspire the world." The door opened. A voice whispered to Lakshmi, "Please, follow me." She walked slowly, each step echoing in her mind. Down the red carpet, past the velvet ropes, past strangers with powerful titles and expensive suits, past her doubts. Sundar stood up the moment he saw her. His mother. The seat in row 2 was no longer empty. As she sat down, eyes met hers from every direction, but she didn't look around. She only looked forward. She didn't need to say a word. She had already said everything with her life. And Modi ji, from the podium, simply nodded. "This is where we begin," he said. "With the silent builders of greatness." Ending line. And that was the moment the spotlight finally found Lakshmi Pichai, not because she asked for it, but because she deserved it. The applause had faded, but the silence that followed was even louder. Lakshmi Pichai sat still in her seat, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes focused on the stage. Sundar, just a few seats away, kept glancing at her with a mixture of pride and emotion he could barely hide. His mother had never been part of public events like this. She had always stayed behind, always in the background, but today, the world was finally seeing her. As Modi ji continued his speech, he spoke of progress, unity, and the strength of India's families. But even while the room filled with his words, Lakshmi's mind was somewhere else, somewhere much quieter. She remembered the old schoolhouse. It had broken windows and faded walls. The roof leaked during monsoons, and the desks wobbled when the children leaned on them. Yet every morning, she walked there before sunrise. Not because she had to, but because she believed education was more than just lessons. It was a gift. She had only one sari for weekdays, and another for special days. Her salary was barely enough. Her husband, Raghunath, worked in the post office. They lived simply. But when Sundar was born, everything changed. He was a curious child, always asking questions, always watching quietly. One day, when he was 5, Sundar asked, "Amma, why do you read so much if you're not going anywhere?" She smiled and said, "Because one day, you will go places, and I need to be ready to understand where you're headed." She saved money quietly, 5 rupees here, 10 rupees there. Every month, she would walk to the bank and deposit it. People laughed. "What will you do with so little, Lakshmi?" they would ask. She never answered. She just smiled. When Sundar got a scholarship to study in the city, Lakshmi did not cry. She packed his bag, ironed his shirt, and gave him a small notebook with only 4 words written inside: learn, lead, serve, return. Years later, he would still carry that notebook. Now, in the grand hall, the crowd stood for a standing ovation. Modi ji had finished his speech, but everyone was still looking at Lakshmi. She tried to blend in, but it was too late. A reporter walked up to her during the break. "Ma'am, do you feel proud today?" She nodded gently. "I have always been proud," she said. "I just never needed an audience." The words were simple, but the entire press room paused outside. People were already searching for her story online. Some didn't even know Sundar had a mother who taught in a village. Some didn't know her name. Now they would never forget it. Later, a young girl approached Lakshmi, holding a notebook. She looked nervous. "Auntie," she said, "I want to be a teacher too." Lakshmi's face softened. "Then you must teach with your heart," she said, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "The best lessons are not in books. They're in how you live." In the distance, Sundar watched. He remembered all the times his mother had chosen to stay behind, not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to let others move forward. That night, as the event ended, a quiet moment passed between mother and son. The cameras were gone. The noise had faded. "Amma," Sundar said, "do you know Modi ji mentioned you first?" Lakshmi smiled. "I heard him," she replied, "but I hope the children in my village heard him too." Sundar nodded. "They will." The news spread faster than anyone expected. By sunrise the next morning, Lakshmi Pichai's name was everywhere on television, in newspapers, and across every phone screen. The teacher behind the tech giant, Modi ji, began speech with a forgotten hero. A mother's quiet journey. Headlines came one after another, and for the first time, Lakshmi's name was louder than Sundar's. But back in her village, it was more than just a story. It was a homecoming. In the dusty school courtyard, where Lakshmi once taught children, sat cross-legged under the neem tree, listening to the headmaster read the newspaper out loud. Their eyes widened as he spoke about her, about how the Prime Minister himself had said her name first. Some of them knew her, some only knew of her. But in that moment, she became legend. A young girl named Kavya raised her hand. "Sir," she asked, "can we write her a letter?" The headmaster paused. "Yes," he said quietly, "we should." By afternoon, the children had filled a box with hand-drawn cards, letters, and little paper flowers. One note said, "Thank you for making a path where there was none." Another said, "I want to be like you, teacher." Back in the city, Lakshmi sat in the quiet of a guest room, far from the noise of reporters and flashing cameras. She had agreed to one interview, just one, but after that, she asked for peace. She wanted time to think, to breathe. Sundar joined her after a meeting. He looked tired but happy. He said, "you should see the messages people are sending." He showed her a screen full of kind words, hearts, thank yous, and stories from strangers. Some from India, some from across the ocean. Lakshmi read slowly, taking in each word. One message stood out. "I lost my mother last year. Seeing you today felt like hearing her voice again. Thank you." Lakshmi blinked softly. Then she put the phone down. "How strange," she whispered, "that I did so little and people see so much." Sundar smiled. "You never did little, You just did it without noise." She nodded. Then, almost hesitantly, she reached into her handbag and pulled out a photograph. It was old and creased. Raghunath Pichai, her late husband, stood tall in a khaki shirt beside a younger version of her. "He always said the world would hear our son's name," she said softly. "But I don't think he ever imagined they'd hear mine too." Sundar took the photo gently. "He would have stood up for you today," he said, "just like the world did." As the sun began to set, Lakshmi walked to the balcony. The air was cooler now, the sky painted with soft orange and pink dot. A soft knock came. At the door, a delivery boy stood with a parcel. "This came for you," he said. Inside the box were over 40 letters from her village, handwritten, folded with care, many addressed simply to Lakshmi teacher, the one who never gave up. Lakshmi sat down, tears rising in her eyes. She opened them slowly, one by one, reading each word with the quiet reverence of someone who had spent a lifetime teaching others to write. And then she paused. One envelope had no name, just a single line. "You once gave me shoes to walk. Today, I walk in your steps." She stared at it for a long moment, remembering a boy with no slippers who used to wait outside the classroom until the bell rang so no one would see his bare feet. She had given him her son's old shoes. He never looked back. "I thought he forgot," she whispered. "They never forget," Sundar said behind her. "Not the ones who really needed you." Lakshmi turned slowly, her voice almost breaking. "Do you think this attention will fade?" "Yes," he said honestly. "It will. People forget headlines, but they remember how someone made them feel." She nodded. Double quotes. "So what do I do now?" she asked. Sundar looked at her, then sat beside her. "You do what you've always done," he said. "You keep giving hope." The next day began quietly, but something in the air had changed. Lakshmi Pichai woke before sunrise, just like she always had. The room was unfamiliar, the mattress softer than what she used back home, but her habits had never been tied to comfort. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and walked slowly to the small prayer space in the corner. She lit the lamp and closed her eyes, not to ask for more but to say thank you. Thank you for the voices of children. Thank you for the hands that learned to write. Thank you for letting the world finally listen. By the time she stepped out to the balcony, the city was alive. Cars moving, birds calling, early workers rushing toward trains. But amidst the chaos, Lakshmi felt something deeper, like a seed she had planted long ago was finally beginning to bloom. On the third day after Modiji's speech, a special invitation arrived, not just for a ceremony, but for something unexpected. "We would be honored." The letter read, "If you would conduct a special master class for young teachers across the nation, it will be broadcast live." Lakshmi's hands trembled slightly. She wasn't used to microphones or stage lights. She had never spoken through a camera before. Her classroom had always been under trees, or inside rooms with cracked blackboards and fading posters of alphabets. Sundar read the letter silently, then turned to her. You don't have to do it if it's too much, he said gently. Lakshmi looked at him and smiled. It's not too much. It's just ... new. On the day of the broadcast, she wore her simplest sari, the cream-colored one, with a light blue border. She tied her hair in a neat bun and added a small bindi on her forehead. When she stepped into the studio, people turned, expecting a speech. What they saw was something else. She didn't sit at the large desk arranged for her. Instead, she pulled up a small stool, like the ones in village classrooms, and asked for a chalkboard. The producer was confused. But madam, everything is digital. Lakshmi replied softly. Some lessons still need dust to settle properly. They gave her the board. The red light came on. Namaste, she began. I am not a scholar. I am not an expert. I am only a teacher. Her voice was soft, but clear. If you are watching this, maybe you are a teacher too. Or maybe you want to be. I hope you do. She spoke for 20 minutes, not about theories or modern education policies, but about patience, about kindness, about the art of listening when no one else is paying attention. I once had a student, she said, who couldn't write even after a full year. Other teachers gave up, but every day, I sat beside him and traced the letters with him. One day, he wrote the word Uma, and I cried. Not because he remembered me, but because he remembered his mother first. That is how we must teach, with love before logic. Teachers, across India, even some from outside the country, watched in silence, some with tears in their eyes. Not because she said something grand, but because she reminded them why they started in the first place. At the end, she folded her hands and said, "Thank you for letting an old teacher sit with you today. Keep teaching, not for marks, but for meaning." The broadcast ended. Silence filled the studio. Then applause outside. The hashtag, #Lakshmi Pichai was trending. But Lakshmi didn't check her phone. She was busy speaking with a young intern who had just joined the news team. "How long have you been here?" she asked the girl. "Only 2 months, ma'am." Lakshmi smiled. "You speak clearly. Do you want to teach someday?" The girl blinked. "No one ever asked me that before." "Maybe you should think about it," Lakshmi said. "The world needs more gentle voices." Later that evening, Sundar sat beside her with a cup of tea. "Amma," he said, "you were brilliant." Lakshmi sipped her tea. "I was just myself." He nodded, and that's exactly what they needed. Then he added, "A school in your old village wants to rename itself. They want to call it Lakshmi Pichai Vidyalaya." Lakshmi set her cup down. "I'm just one teacher," she said softly. "Yes," Sundar said, "but to them, you were the first one who made them believe they mattered." She closed her eyes for a moment, overwhelmed, not by the honor, but by the thought of all the forgotten teachers who still sat on old stools, waiting for their names to be called. The next few days moved like a quiet storm. Lakshmi Pichai's message had reached everywhere, not just in India, but across oceans and borders. Schools in Kerala, Delhi, Bengal, and Punjab played her classroom speech during morning assemblies. A teacher from Kenya sent a thank you letter. A student in Malaysia sent a handmade bookmark. A grandmother in London mailed a poem. Her words, once spoken in the quiet corners of a village school, now echoed through halls she had never seen. But, amidst the noise, Lakshmi still woke early. She still folded her sari neatly. She still prayed quietly, away from cameras. Yet something unusual happened that week. A call came from the Prime Minister's office. "The PM would like to meet you," the voice said. Lakshmi was silent. In person, the voice added gently, "He wants to thank you." Sundar looked at her. "Amma, are you ready?" Lakshmi took a deep breath. "I've never been ready for anything that mattered. I just did it anyway." 2 days later, she stepped into the Prime Minister's residence. No red carpet, no flashing lights, just a warm, respectful silence. Modi ji greeted her not with a speech, but with folded hands and a soft smile. Namaste, Lakshmi ji, he said. She replied, Namaste beta. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. They sat together, not as leader and guest, but as two people shaped by classrooms, stories, and silent strength. Modi ji listened more than he spoke. You reminded the nation, he said, that behind every achievement is someone who never asked for credit. Lakshmi nodded. I didn't teach for awards. I taught so children wouldn't feel small. Modi ji smiled. And now, you've made every teacher feel tall. Then he asked, what would you like the government to do in your name? A statue? A fund? A scholarship? Lakshmi paused. No statues, she said. Just benches. Modi ji looked puzzled. Benches. Yes, she said, her voice calm. I want every government school in poor areas to have enough benches so that no child sits on the floor. The room fell silent. I taught children who sat on broken bricks. Their spines bent early. Their dignity bent with it. Give them benches. Give them a reason to sit straight. Modi ji nodded slowly. Done, he said. We will call it the Lakshmi Bench Project. News of the meeting spread fast, but that night, Lakshmi didn't return to the hotel. She asked Sundar to take her somewhere else. Amma, where do you want to go? He asked. She looked out the window. Home. They drove 4 hours, through highways, fields, and winding roads. And just before dawn, they reached Eater's small house in the village. The gate was rusted. The walls faded, but her garden still had flowers, and the wind still carried the scent of morning jasmine. She stepped inside and sat on the old wooden cot. Her feet rested on the cool floor. The birds sang like they used to when she was younger, and for the first time in weeks, Lakshmi exhaled. A few hours later, children from the village came running to see her. They carried notebooks, mangoes, and folded letters. One girl had tears in her eyes. I'm a teacher, she said. Our school just got benches, real ones. Lakshmi smiled and pulled the girl close. Then sit proud, she said. Sit like you belong there. The girl nodded. And never stop learning, Lakshmi added. The world is big, but you are not small. Later that evening, the village held a gathering. No lights, no stage. Just a circle of chairs and mats under the banyan tree. Elders, teachers, and children all sat together as Lakshmi told stories, not of glory or fame but of chalk, rain, small victories, and second chances. A boy asked, what is the most important thing you ever taught? Lakshmi thought deeply. To raise your hand, she said, not for attention, but to ask, to try, to believe your voice matters. And as stars blinked above them, it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like something deeper, something timeless. Because Lakshmi had not just become known, she had become remembered. A week had passed since the night under the banyan tree. Lakshmi Pichai sat at her old writing desk, the wood scratched by time, the drawer still creaking open like it always had. Her fingers ran over the smooth surface where she once checked homework, wrote lesson plans, and penned letters that were never posted. The village had returned to its rhythm. Cows walked along dusty roads, children played cricket with sticks, and the sound of prayer bells echoed at dawn. But something had changed. Not just in the world outside, but inside Lakshmi. 2 letters still poured in. Strangers sent flowers, shawls, books, and cards. Universities offered awards. A publishing house wanted to write her biography. A TV anchor requested an exclusive series. But Lakshmi said no to all of it. She didn't want the noise. She only wanted one thing. To finish a letter she had started years ago. She opened the drawer and took out a yellowed envelope. The paper inside was thin and old. The ink faded in parts. The top line read, "To my future self." It was a letter she had written the night Sundar left for his first scholarship exam in the city. She never mailed it, never read it again. But now, she picked up a pen, and she wrote the rest. Dear Lakshmi, if you're reading this, it means you waited. It means you didn't quit. It means you kept showing up, even when no one said thank you. Do you remember the little boy who cried on his first day? He now smiles when he teaches others. Do you remember the broken fan that made summers unbearable? The children still learned. Do you remember the days you cooked for 30 students because the school had no lunch program? Those children never forgot your kindness. You gave, not because you had much, but because you believed someone else might have even less. And look at what happened. Your name was said on the biggest stage. Not for being famous, but for being faithful. You were not forgotten. You were finally seen. But let this be your reminder. No award will ever matter more than the moment a child says, I learned that from you. So walk with grace, Lakshmi. Not because the world honors you now, but because you honored yourself first. And remember, this journey was never about being known. It was about being remembered by the ones who needed you the most. She folded the letter gently and placed it back in the drawer, not to hide it, but to keep it safe. That evening, Sundar returned home. He brought a small gift. Not a phone, not a medal, not an invitation. It was a framed picture. The photo showed Lakshmi seated on her old school bench, surrounded by laughing children, chalk in hand. At the bottom were 4 words: learn, lead, serve, return. Lakshmi smiled. You kept the notebook. Sundar nodded. I kept everything. They sat in silence, listening to the soft wind outside. In the distance, temple bells rang. A knock came at the door. A young girl stood there, holding a book. I'm a teacher, she said shyly. Will you teach us again? Lakshmi looked at her. School is closed today, child. We know, she said. But we don't need a classroom. We just need you. Lakshmi walked outside, sat on the front steps, and opened the book. Soon, 5 more children joined, then 10. They brought mats, pencils, and snacks. By twilight, she was teaching under the sky. Once again, no cameras, no microphones, just voices, learning to rise. And that was how it ended. Not with applause, not with a medal, but with a teacher doing what she had always done, sharing knowledge, spreading light, and helping others rise quietly. Lakshmi Pichai's life quietly returned to its rhythm, simple, slow, and soft. But something invisible had shifted. Her village no longer saw her as just a teacher. Now, she was the one who reminded a nation how powerful a quiet life could be. Schools across India painted her name on benches, donated under the Lakshmi Bench project. Her teaching style, gentle, personal, full of patience, became a case study for teacher training programs. Universities that once taught theories now included a short clip of her masterclass to remind young educators that real learning comes from the heart. But Lakshmi remained unchanged. She still rose before dawn. She still drank tea from her old steel tumbler. She still prayed for children she'd never meet. And most importantly, she still taught, not full-time, not for a salary, not because someone asked her to, but because it was who she was. On a clear spring morning, the school principal arrived with news. The President of India is giving you the highest civilian honor for education, he said. Lakshmi listened quietly. She nodded. I'm grateful, she said, but can I ask for one change? Of course, he replied. Don't give it to me alone, she said. Give it to every teacher who taught before sunrise, under broken roofs, with nothing but faith. The principal blinked. But it's your name on the award. Lakshmi smiled. Then let it stand for all the names we never heard. On the day of the ceremony, she wore the same cream sari, no makeup, no fanfare. As she stepped onto the stage, the entire audience stood not out of duty, but out of respect. When asked to say a few words, she stepped to the mic and began softly. I am just one thread in a long sari, she said. You see me now because someone held the light this way, but there are thousands of Lakshmis still waiting to be seen. Let this award not close a story, but open many. She stepped back. The hall erupted in applause. But Lakshmi didn't smile for the cameras. Instead, she looked at the crowd and searched for the teachers, the ones with tired eyes and chalk-stained fingers. She found them, and she bowed her head slightly to them. Later, at a small gathering, a reporter asked her, "How do you want to be remembered?" Lakshmi paused. "I don't," she said simply. "I want my work to be remembered." She looked at a group of children playing nearby. "If they grow up kinder, braver, and more curious, then my story is already complete." As dusk fell, Lakshmi walked alone to the school where it all began. She entered the old classroom still standing, still echoing memories. On the wall, someone had written in big letters, "Every child is a story. Every teacher is a beginning." She touched the words gently. A young girl entered behind her and whispered, "Amma, teacher, may I sit here?" Lakshmi nodded. Soon, more children followed. No one planned a class that evening, but learning doesn't always follow a schedule. Lakshmi picked up a chalk piece. Her hand trembled slightly, but her heart did not. On that board, she wrote only one sentence: knowledge, given with love, becomes wisdom. The sun dipped behind the trees. The stars began to shine, and a classroom without walls came alive again. The world would move on, headlines would fade, but in 1,000 villages, under banyan trees and tin roofs, stories of Lakshmi Pichai would be told not as a legend, but as a memory shared by children who were once told they mattered. Final line. And so, without seeking fame or fortune, Lakshmi Pichai became the voice of every teacher who ever believed that kindness could change the world one child at a time.